Hello and welcome to what every learning leader needs to know to significantly improve L&D outcomes. The session is being presented today by SweetRush. We have three wonderful presenters from SweetRush today, John, Emma, and Tiffany. So I'm going to hand it over to them. The floor is yours. Everybody enjoy the session.
Thank you. Thank you, Mel. I will go ahead and share my screen. Right, thank you. Yes, thank you, Mel. Thanks to e-learning industry for having us, and welcome everyone. Thank you all so much for coming. Today, we will be talking about the learner experience and specifically what every learning leader should know to significantly improve L&D outcomes. So we will begin with some quick introductions of our team. John, do you want to kick things off?
Yeah, I sure will. Hello, everyone. I'm John Cleve. I'm Senior Learning Engineer at SweetRush. I've been developing technology-based training for over 3 decades, particularly experiential learning, simulations, and the like. Over 300 projects delivered to date.
Thanks, John. And hello again. I'm Emma. I started my L&D career in 2001, so quite a long time ago also. Over the past 22 years, I've worked in corporate settings as an instructional designer and L&D leader. And I've also worked on the vendor side as a performance consultant and senior learning experience designer. I'm going to hand over now to our colleague Tiffany, who will be supporting us today by monitoring the chat and also helping out with an activity a bit later on. Hey, Tiffany.
Hello, folks. I'm a senior learning evangelist at SweetRush, and I've been serving for about 20 years in the corporate, nonprofit, and public education spaces. Time flies when you're having fun, and I am very happy to join you today.
Great. Thank you, Tiffany. Thank you, John. All right, we have one more introduction to make, and then we will get started. For those of you who don't know us, here's a quick introduction from SweetRush. SweetRush was founded in 2001, primarily as a custom e-learning service provider. But over the past 20 years, we've expanded our capabilities into other areas, including XR, which is our immersive learning technologies custom learning service, Talent Solutions, our staff augmentation service, Transforming Leaders and Culture, which we like to refer to around here as TLC, and Good Things, which is the name of our custom learning service for nonprofit organizations and foundations. And we've been recognized for our work by a number of L&D thought leaders, including Brandon Hall, Chief Learning Officer, Training Industry, and of course, our lovely friends here at e-learning industry. John, did I miss anything?
Yeah, I just want everyone to know we're at SweetRush, we're really passionate about our craft, and that's really why we're here today. It's to pass along some of the things we learned over the years, and really to emphasize that meaningful learning experiences for your teams are critical to driving impactful outcomes for your business.
Yeah, that's a pretty big thing. Thank you. All right, let's take a quick look at our agenda and share what we're going to be going over today. In a moment, I'm going to kick things off by taking a quick look at the L&D landscape as it is right now, and to highlight some of the top challenges that L&D leaders are facing. And a little spoiler alert for you, it's all related to the learner experience. Then I'll explain why the learner experience is so important and why we need to be paying attention to it. After that, John will take over to walk you through the principles of learner-centered design and to share a framework with you that we're currently exploring with our own projects. This should take us around 25 minutes, and then after that, we're going to turn things over to you as we walk through an activity that will help you identify how to apply the learner-centered principles with your own projects. We'll save a little bit of time at the end for questions, but please, as Mel said, feel free to ask your questions throughout, and we'll do our best to respond to those in the moment where we can. Otherwise, we'll come back to the questions during the Q&A portion of the presentation. And we'll also follow up at the end with any unanswered questions via email, so please don't be shy. At the end of the presentation, we'll also share a link to our 2024 trend survey, and we would love your input. So please stick around until the end if you're able to and would like to take part. In fact, please stick around anyway, because we'd love to have you till the end. All right, let's get going for real. So, as I just mentioned, we're going to start with a snapshot of the current L&D landscape, which is evolving at a rapid pace. And with that evolution comes a number of challenges, whether it's establishing a culture of learning in hybrid workplaces, future-proofing the organization by upskilling, or keeping pace with new technology. Who else is getting bombarded with articles, emails, LinkedIn posts about AI and the metaverse right now, right? There's just always something keeping us on our toes. But interestingly, and in spite of these shifts, some challenges appear to remain constant, and they show up time and time again on the top of industry reports. First one we have here is aligning learning programs to business goals, which took the top spot on this year's LinkedIn Workplace Learning Report and its 4 focus areas of L&D. At its TICE conference this year, training industry listed delivering engaging training experiences as the #1 implementation challenge facing L&D. And finally, we have measuring impact and demonstrating value, which truthfully appears in some form or other on just about every industry report out there, including our own. For our 2023 L&D Learner Experience Trends Report, we asked learning leaders to share their top 5 challenges, and our findings concur with those of our industry peers, with 34% of learning leaders sharing that providing engaging learning experiences was among their top 5 challenges. 33% struggle to tie learning needs to business objectives, and 25% find using data to improve learning or prove effectiveness to be among their top challenges. And when you take this together, the findings tell us that leaders want and need to shift their focus and attention on adding value by creating engaging and effective learning experiences that align with the business goals and that can be measured. Which leads us to why we're here today. We want to draw your attention to what we believe is a critical driver of success when it comes to improving learning outcomes, and that's the learning experience itself. And that might not be what you're expecting us to say. So to put this into context, we're going to take a quick look at a framework that you should all be very familiar with. So here we have the Katzell-Kirkpatrick model of learning evaluation with its 4 levels. And as learning leaders, we're taught to flip this model onto its head and begin with the end in mind, by identifying the desired business outcomes that we're trying to improve, such as increased revenue or market share, or the sale of a specific product or service. It could even be that we're trying to improve employee retention, turnover, engagement. Ultimately, we're trying to, ultimately, this is all about how your learning solution will impact the business. And these desired outcomes should be defined by and come from the business itself. We then take that information and use it to inform the next level down, which is behavior, or level 3. Here we want to understand the behaviors that will drive those product sales, or improve market shares, or enhance employee engagement. In other words, what should we see our sales team, our employees, our target audience doing? Those desired behaviors then inform the next level down, which is the learning level, and what it is specifically that we need to teach our target audience. So what do they need to know? What do they need to be able to do in order to change their behavior? Finally, the learning informs the reaction. This is where things get interested. And instead of reaction, we prefer to think of level 1 as experience. And from here on out, we're going to refer to level 1 as level 1 experience. So here we want to understand what kind of experience we need to provide in order to nurture and support that knowledge and skills transfer. What kind of environments, modality, tools, and performance support will our target audience respond to best? How, when, and where do they like to learn? And it can be really easy to overlook the importance of this. In fact, we only have to look at how we currently measure each of these levels to illustrate this point. For level 4, we want to know if we delivered business results, and we prove this with hard data such as revenue, sales reports, or employee turnover rates and engagement scores. For level 3, we introduced a mix of quantitative and qualitative data to determine if those behaviours did in fact change. And this could include things like KPIs or 360s. We might even use observation. Level 2 is usually measured as part of the learning experience itself. And here we're talking tests, quizzes, performance assessments, simulations, or any combination of these things. Ultimately, we want to check for understanding and application of the knowledge and skills before we let people go off and do the thing. But what about level 1? What do we use to check for the learner's reaction to or experience of the learning? And more importantly, when are we doing this? So I'm going to take a pause here and actually turn this over to you and hear from you. Tell us, how are you doing this? What does your level 1 learning evaluation look like? And Tiffany, I'd love it if you can tell us what you're seeing in the chat, please.
Sure. I just see a response just now from Jane, who's saying that feedback surveys are a big one.
Yep.
Yeah, ubiquitous, right? We want to know, what do you think? What did you think? How are you applying it? Where did you get stuck? Et cetera, et cetera.
Got another response, a +1 on the surveys and closeout debrief. And then confidence
I love seeing
survey.
you love seeing the confidence survey, because it's one thing to learn, it's another thing to know that you've learned. Definitely. How confident you to apply the learning in your job.
Exactly. As I say, it speaks to the application piece, which is, so lots of surveys coming through here.
Yeah, there's a lot of +1s there, about a +5, 6. Yeah. Oh, Sue's got a question. Sue's wondering, where does customer feedback satisfaction feature with the 4 stages? It sounds like, what would you say for that, actually?
I think clearly it relates to behaviors, right? Because oftentimes when you're doing customer service training, you're really trying to aim at where they're asking the right kinds of questions, showing empathy, et cetera, et cetera. So the customer satisfaction should directly relate to that. So typically I'd put it at the level 3.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm also seeing pre and post training assessment, focus groups, one-on-ones, and appraisal, although L&D won't see this information. Oh, yeah, that would be interesting.
Yeah, one big problem. What does L&D get to see in order to help make better design decisions? Perpetual issue.
Yeah, it is. So we're jumping ahead a little. So thank you very much for those comments and for those insights. And, we concur, in our experience, level 1 is typically used after the training event has been completed to capture learners' feedback, whether they liked and would recommend the training, how relevant and meaningful it was. We also come across organisations who use level 1 to measure things like attendance, hours spent learning, the number of modules completed. And while seeing this term a lot now around LinkedIn, vanity metrics, they're great for internal marketing and reporting. They're not going to help you pinpoint what's working with your learning solutions and what isn't. And this is so crucial. And let's take a look at why it's so crucial here. So we take one last look at this model. And I have just explained how important it is from a learning experience design to define those level 4 results or business outcomes first, because it informs the learning solution design. Specifically those performance outcomes and knowledge and skills that we need to teach. But if we look at this from the learner's point of view, it's actually the learner experience that drives the learning, performance, and business outcomes. Because when learners have a positive experience, they are much more likely to learn something, which drives the learning outcomes. And when they learn something, they're much more likely to change their behavior, which drives those performance outcomes. And when they change their behavior, that's when you start to see all this real impact and results, which of course then drives the business outcomes. So what does this mean? It means that it's really important for us to be able to identify what a good learning experience looks like, and to be able to track and measure whether we're meeting those expectations before it's too late. Because if we don't, and the learners have a bad learning experience, the odds are that the training won't work or be as effective, and you won't achieve your desired performance or business outcomes. So, what constitutes good and bad learning experiences? Here's John with some examples of when learning experiences go wrong. Dun dun dun. I'm going to turn off my screen here for a moment so we can see John in his full glory.
Yeah, so this is my fireside chat. I mentioned I've done 300 projects, and not all of them have been stunning successes. I'm going to tell you about 2 of them, not failures, but lessons learned. So years ago, we were building a training for a software company to teach its salespeople to be more consultative. So instead of just transacting purchases by customers, they're really supposed to go in and get to know the business and come up with recommendations and be seen as a consultant. And so we built a beautiful program to teach all the salespeople how to be more consultative. And after it was deployed, we found out that the salespeople are held the quarterly sales quotas. And so consultative sales takes much longer to really get in there and try to get to the VP and make the sale. And so they're penalized if they're not every quarter turning in some amount of numbers. And so the whole thing didn't work like we had planned. And if we had known early on what motivates salespeople and how to get them to do the things we want, we would have had a much higher probability that we would have succeeded. So that's my first story. My second one is we were working with a major consulting company to teach their new hires things about the company so that they could get in there and be productive. And our stakeholders were telling us, we've really got to do this mobile first and have it on their phones, because all of them have phones and they use them every day. And therefore, the entire program really ought to be based around the phone. Fortunately, they allowed us to do an empathy interview where we sat down with 4 or 5 of the new hires, and they all said to us very explicitly, please don't do everything on a phone or a laptop. That we want to get to know the people in the company. We want to work hand in hand with senior consultants. We just don't want to be shoveled a bunch of stuff on our phone. So fortunately, by hearing that, we were able to design a program that included a lot of face-to-face and cohort and mentoring kind of training, which we wouldn't have done if we had just plowed forward with what the stakeholders told us. So 2 instances where knowing the learner and knowing their milieu can lead to better outcomes.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, John. And I think this sort of speaks to the overall theme of today's presentation, right? And we were talking about this when we were putting together the webinar about how you can design the best thing, but I'll let you finish that thought. I'm going to not do it justice.
Yeah, I think that at the end of the day, I think that Em and I are both, and Tiffany are all of one mind, which is it doesn't matter how well designed a piece of training is. If you haven't aligned it with what the learners want and need, it probably won't work. They control their brains. It's very important to understand that learner. So empathy is really probably the most important skill that an L&D professional can have. So there's my sermon.
All right. Thank you so much, John. Let's go back and continue. So the good news is that it is possible to improve learning outcomes by improving the learning experience. And that is why we're here today, to unpack what a good learning experience might look like and include, and to share a data-driven approach to designing and evaluating impactful learning experiences before they get applied to your target audience. And I think that's the real key message here, is that we need to be looking at this before it goes out to your audience. So I'm going to turn things back over to John now, and he's going to walk us through a framework that we hope will be very, very helpful for you. So over to you, John.
Great. Yeah, but I'm going to put a big caveat in front of this. And let's all be honest. Learning's hard. It's hard to master new skills. It takes a lot of effort, and we don't always have that effort to learn. And so therefore, it's really hard to teach. And having taught my whole life in various capacities, I know firsthand that you can't, there's no silver bullet. And so I don't want to have you think that we're up here to give you the secret sauce or the magic recipe with it. I think that what we're hoping to do is just share some best practices that we found useful. One of the things, like I said, that SweetRush believes is that you really need to know the learner really, really well to design effective training. And a lot of what we're going to be talking about are ways to kind of get to know the learner so that you can design better toward it. And really to not stop learning about the learner at the point that your design is done, that to continue to collect data to let you know that you're aligned with them. Ultimately, the goal here is to figure out what learners want and need and show them the connection between the learning and those wants and needs. And we use a thing we call the learner-centered design framework. It's a thing in process. We've made changes to it. We continue to make changes to it, but I'm now going to walk you through the 7 elements of the learner-centered design model that we use and let you know very briefly why we found this to be useful. So the first one, well, I should say, so for all of these, you see that there are 7 things that are up there: effective, relevant, adaptive, intuitive, and so forth. And we found that these are independent and interesting measures of learning design. And so you can use them to determine, am I really going to release something that at the end of the day, a learner is going to it's going to resonate with the learner and they're going to become more effective. And throughout, and really the core of this is to be putting yourself in the shoes of the learner throughout and asking yourself, what kind of learning experience would make me feel more confident in my work? What would make me care about it? And so on and so forth. And so constantly asking that question of what's the learner going to think? How are they thinking? What are they going to do? We think leads to better design. So now I'm going to go through each of the 7 standards very briefly and just let you know how each one works. So the first one is effective. Good learning design should be effective. And that means that it improves their ability to operate in the world, gives them a better understanding of how the world works. If learning doesn't impact the performance, really none of the other elements in the LCD really matter. And really, most importantly, it's designed to make learners more confident in their work, because it's one thing to actually become better at something. It's quite another to recognize that, yeah, I am getting this. I am a different person than I was before I did the training. So confidence, as somebody earlier in the chat had brought up, is a really important piece of this whole equation. The second learner-centered design standard is relevance, which is that once you're in the training, you see how it relates back to your job and to your life. It's really important for you to recognize the mapping between what it is that you're learning and how you're going to be applying it out in the world in order to facilitate transfer back to the job, which at the end of the day, the learning experience is a means toward that. And so we're always thinking about how do you make it more relevant. One way that we see that we're making it more relevant often is that we see that learners are more engaged in it. They seem to be participating more actively. Typically, that means, yeah, we hit the relevancy standard. The third one is adaptive, and adaptive is based on the idea that your learners are not of one mind. They're of many minds. And end of the day, we want to have learning that accommodates the differences that people have. Maybe it's differences in skills or experience or viewpoint or roles and responsibilities. But wherever you can, accommodating those differences ensures that you're going to actually help everyone to get improve their skills. And we really want learners to be able to say, yeah, you tailored it to my needs. A very positive piece of feedback. So the fourth one for the learning-centered design standards is intuitiveness. And the idea there is that whatever training we give to them, it should just feel natural to work through it. If they're spending more time trying to figure out what do I click, where do I go, how do I find this info, and so forth, they're spending their precious brain cells on the interface and not on the content. So we really, at SweetRush, we spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to make the flow feel like it's just a natural thing. So you're not thinking about the modality, you're actually thinking about the training that's inside of it. So the fifth one is efficiency. Josh Bersin had pointed out that the average worker has 27 minutes a week to do training. And so when you think about it, we're being given a precious few minutes of this person's time. Are we making the best use of those minutes? And do they really need to sit and watch a half-hour-long video that many of them already know the content they're in? We really owe that to the learner to say, how can we actually get the training done so that they leads to performance improvement and do it in the most efficient way that we can? I really want learners to say at the end of the day, yeah, you respected my time. I appreciate that, because if we show them respect, they're going to show us respect. So the next one is empowering. And the idea there is we're each in control of our own mind. And so what we want to do is not necessarily spoon feed them everything that they need to know, but to try wherever we can to give them agency and control over it. The idea here is that we'd love to prepare them so that once the training is done, they take it on themselves to learn more or to extend it or to apply it. They own it. They have the locus of control. And so empowerment for SweetRush is a really useful metric to determine, have we really shifted the control to the learner? And then last but not least is social. And we're, our species is inherently social. We're a social species. Everything that you've all learned came directly or indirectly from another human being. And a lot of times, particularly in this day and age of chat GPT and e-learning and this and that, you can forget the fact that it's ultimately human to human transfer of knowledge. And so I think that a really good learning design doesn't take the human out of the equation. It provides opportunities for coaching, mentoring, feedback, a very important piece of it. And like I said, very easy to forget as we move into this ever further into our digital age of L&D. So there you have it. Those are the 7. And we're going to come back to these so that it's not done here, but we find that this is a useful framework to think about learning design and how to create more effective training.
Yeah, thanks so much, John. And as John mentioned earlier, we recommend applying learner-centered design principles while you're planning, designing, and developing your learning solution. And this means incorporating LCD into both your needs analysis and design and development strategy. So how do we do it? Well, rather than tell you, we're going to have a go at doing it together with an activity that we have planned. In a moment, we're going to switch screens and take you to our LCD activity map, which is in an application called Mural. And Tiffany will share a link to the Mural board in the chat in a moment. When you open the link, you'll see this table, and across the top, you'll see we have each of the 7 LCD principles. Underneath, there are 2 rows. The first row is for needs analysis, and the second row is for evaluation and assessment. And we'd like you to identify the types of needs analysis and assessment activities that you might conduct when considering each of these LCD principles. For example, if you wanted to create an experience that allows the learner to feel empowered, what information might you need to gather first before you can begin that design process? And then how might you test and design to ensure that it has incorporated those elements and principles? And to help you out, we have filled out the first LCD principle for you, which John is actually going to walk through in just a moment. And we'd love you to have a go at the rest. But before we do that, I'm going to switch screens, and then Tiffany is going to take over with some instructions to use Mural. So let me just bring up the Mural here.
Thank you,
Tiffany,
Emma.
and over to you.
Wonderful. Okay, folks, just a few Mural logistics just to cover some common little sticky points. Power users, please bear with me. So we've placed some blank sticky notes, as you can see there. They're ready for you to use. So when you're ready to add something, just grab one of those notes, pull it over to the side as far away from the other sticky notes as possible, and just double click the note to begin typing, as Emma's exemplifying here. If you find that you're not able to grab a note or type, you're playing kind of a tug of war with another person who's trying to grab it, you might need to just grab a new one. And if you find that you're not able to grab anything, you may be in move mode. So as Emma's waving around at the bottom there, there's a little hand, and that will help you navigate really easily without pulling stuff across the board. Yes, exactly. So you can use move mode to navigate really quickly over to where you want to be without disrupting any of the layout. And then you can just deselect it when you're ready to get back into edit mode to type on your sticky notes. Just click the hand again, click your post-it, drag it over, rinse, repeat. Again, sometimes with a group this size, we do end up grabbing each other's sticky notes. So drag it as far away as possible, as Emma's been showing. So I will drop the link to this Mural board that we're going to be working with together into chat, and I will keep an eye out for any questions or troubleshooting. And if anything is difficult for you, you find you can't access the link, Mural's just acting up for you, we can work together and I will be your scribe. It's not a problem at all.
Yeah,
Back to you.
just post stuff into the chat and give us the LCD. So say like efficient : time on task, and then Tiffany will make sure that your post gets posted to the appropriate place.
I'm standing by.
All right, thank you, Tiffany. So please go ahead and get started. We'll follow you and we'll talk through what we're seeing. We're going to keep this pretty casual and relaxed. In the meantime, John, if I zoom into our first row here, do you want to give us a quick read through of the effective column for those who might still be unsure of what it is that we're doing here? Yeah. And then, of course, if you are comfortable with what we're doing, just go ahead. I can see lots of little cursors whizzing around, so you carry on.
Yeah, it always reminds me of a beehive.
Yeah.
For some reason.
All right,
all the little busy bees going on. All right, I'm going to walk through the first one just as a primer, because in many ways, effective is the most straightforward of all the LCD standards, I believe. Not to say that we always accomplish it, but it's the most standard. Now, keep in mind that there's two columns, and the top column is how do you actually learn more about the need when you're setting out to actually design a piece of training, and the one below it is how do you continue to assess as you're doing design and into development, and then end of the day deploying it. Keep the data flow coming, and so we've broken those apart in the for uncovering this need. Things like if you have a competency model at your organization, obviously a good place to start. What are the skills that people need to have in order to succeed at a given role that you're targeting? You can look at standard operating procedures. What are the things that people have to do? I'm not really teaching any of you anything, because if you've been in this business, you're probably already doing that every day. But nonetheless, it's important to come back to say, why am I teaching what it is they told me I had to teach? Experts are obviously a great source of information to uncover the effectiveness. What do people need to know? What mistakes do they make? Novices, as I brought up in my story earlier, talk to the learners themselves. What do you struggle with? What do you wish you were better at? Really important data to get you to it. Issue logs are one where if you actually do chronicle when people ask for support or need help, where are the areas that people seem to struggle the most with? That may very well be what you want to target in the training. And then, mentors and coaches and people who are around learners, obviously rich source of insight into how to make people more effective. Going to the second row, which is, now that you've got a design in mind and you're starting to build it out in Storyline or Articulate or Captivate or whatever, don't stop collecting data around this. One thing that we sometimes do at SweetRush is let's roll out a piece of the training early to a control group, to a small, subset of the learners that we're going to hit. Let's see how they consume it. And then let's use the data that we collect from that in order to make adjustments so that we can actually improve the subsequent modules, let's say. And so instead of the idea of the waterfall of let's push everything out and hope it works, let's dribble it out, learn from it, and make incremental adjustments to it. Pre-post training 360s, I saw several in the chat that people are pointing that out. They've done the training. Are we seeing any changes in effectiveness? Are they making less mistakes? Are they handling calls more quickly and effectively, so on and so forth? And then obviously ask the learners after they've gone through it, do you feel more confident? Do you feel like you're able to complete tasks? Have we reduced stress? Have we included mental health? So that's the idea for looking at the effectiveness roles. We collect data up front. We continue to collect data downstream so that we're constantly trying to get closer to the target.
Yeah, timing.
Yeah. So do we want to walk through the other ones? We're getting a fair number of items in there. Yeah, I see somebody had done understand roles and responsibilities. You're absolutely right. That what is this person supposed to be doing? What does this person's day look like? This learner that we're going to consume the precious minutes of their week to try to make them better in something. What do they are faced with? Going back to my story about the software company and the salespeople, they're under pressure to deliver subsequent sales numbers every quarter. So there's a lot of stress, particularly toward the end of the quarter. So can we actually somehow convince them that this training is going to lead to higher sales numbers? Something that's always near and dear to a salesperson's heart. So absolutely agree with that one. I see. Yeah, perform a gap analysis. Yeah, I mean, what does perfect look like, and then what does average behavior look like? And now we look for are the exemplary things that we want people to be doing, and how do that compare to the things that they are doing? Let's say in a call center or similar. That can give us a whole lot of ideas of what how we need to make these changes. I see that, yeah, and I see that there's one about understanding the relevant work problems, and a lot of that does come down to picking out what is the issues. I mean, when I talk about people learn when they want to learn, we all want to learn things that make our lives easier, that reduces heat and stress and bother. And so if we can pinpoint, yeah, these are the things that a learner would love to eliminate from their life, then let's provide training that says, hey, if you want to get rid of the stress, here's one way to do it. Give us an hour of your time. We'll help you do that. Yeah, and then I'm looking down in the second column for relevancy. The mystery caller is an interesting one, or the secret shopper, right? Is that once they've done the training, let's go out there and take a look at what people are actually doing in the field, and come back with, probably do a random sampling to that, because it's pretty hard to test every learner. But let's see if the learner is, let's say in a call center, are they asking good questions? Are they correctly resolving the issues? Are they exuding a feeling of confidence, so that you feel like they do care about your problem and are helping you with it? An excellent thing to do. And in fact, you could combine that with pilots as well, which is you roll out some training, then you secret shopper them, you determine, oh yeah, we are seeing a nudge in a positive direction, we must be on the right track. And then you can complete building the training, knowing that you're actually going to make a difference and achieve a business outcome.
And that was going to be my question, John, really, because something we've been talking about is how important it is really to get this bit right before we're rolling it out, right? Because this is what we typically do. We measure level 1 after it's all said and done. But what we really want to try and get into the habit of doing is testing, iterating, prototyping, and getting those control groups in, getting that feedback early and often, so that we can then course correct and adjust, and know that what we're going to put out is going to be closer to what we're looking for those outcomes.
I'm really glad you said that, Emma, because I think, like I said, I've been in this business for 3 decades, and I would say that the vast majority of things that I've helped design and develop have been first best guesses. And so I've gone out and done the interviews and done the gap analysis and said, okay, well, let's do this kind of training or that kind of training. And then we build it, and the stakeholders say, we love it, thank you so much, we're going to put it on our LMS, and then it stops there. And so the next time I have a project, it's another first best guess, and again and again and again. So that idea of like, don't stop, your first guess is probably mistaken, there's probably problems, flaws with it. Continue to collect that data and use it as a feedback loop, which is the true, when they first did ADDIE, the idea there was it's supposed to be loops, right? ADDIE. We always stop at the E, and then we're okay, time to move on to the next thing. And I would love it if our industry changed that.
Yeah, so true. I mean, it's often presented as this linear thing, but I learned it as a circle, right? It's just the E's in the middle, and you kind of just keep coming back to it. So, all right, shall we take a look at what else we're seeing in here? I'm going to move us on over to this column, adaptive.
Yeah, adaptive is an interesting one. I think that, one of the ones that I would put in there is really take a deep look at a population level. I mean, are they all the same kind, or do you have a mix of seasoned, experienced employees mixed together with people who are brand new? Do you have people who are, gifted and really smart in their role, and other people who are struggling? Because those all might argue to say, well, instead of just one size fits all, let's split it up. Let's give this population more intensive training, and this one we allow them to test out, let's say. That's all in adaptive, and a lot of it comes down with both analysis of your population and a very deep analysis of your content. Does everybody need this content, or can we segment it by role and responsibility? Can we make it optional, and trust them to pick it if it's germane to them?
I think this also relies on a real deep understanding of what those performance outcomes look like, right? So what is it that we need them to do? What is it that we need them to know, so that we can build in those test out options and make sure they're really targeted and focused.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
and I see that somebody put perform a gap analysis in there, and that's an interesting one, because in this column, what that tells me is, all right, let's look at performance. So we have people that some of them are really good performers, most of them are in the middle to follow a normal distribution, and some of them are in the tail, right? Well, let's go look at who's in the tail, because we may very well see that it's based on some attribute. Maybe it's the new hires, maybe it's people in a particular region, maybe it's this and that. That might argue to say, let's not do training for the entire group, most of whom are at least passively competent. Let's focus in on that tail and address whatever thing is out there that might be causing problems. I love that.
Yeah, me too. And then let's just take a scoot down and see what we have for evaluating or assessing adaptiveness.
Yeah, one is learning style assessments, and the learning style has got a whole lot of academic debate around it, which I'm not going to enter here, but nonetheless, I do believe that what you can do is let's say you put a piece of e-learning out there and you have a whole bunch of different kinds of things in it and they're optional, right? You could use XAPI analysis and being to say, okay, who was looking at videos and who was looking, who clicked the optional links, who clicked the download the PDF, and how many people did that. And it may very well start to tell you that, yeah, this audience really loved the videos. They spent a lot of time on the videos. They scrolled really quickly when it got to any blocks of text. So maybe in future training, we emphasize the video, we de-emphasize text as an example. So I think looking at the styles that people exhibit when they're in a piece of training that you're rolling out can be very illuminative about learning lessons that's going to lead to better future training.
And actually, we've got a question in the chat about learning styles. John from Jocelyn, how do you feel about learning style, or do you believe that content is what guides the way information should be presented? I know I have an answer, but I'd love to hear yours.
All right, you want me to go first? All right, I will let you know, and I'll put it on the table. I think that, if you look at the research, there's nothing clear in the research that says that there are just people have distinct learning styles that are universal to all the learning content. Typically it is content based, that they may watch a lot of video, but maybe they're looking to consume content that lends itself best to video. So I don't believe that we all have these universal proclivities. I know that a lot of people don't like to read a lot, but maybe it's because what they're reading isn't relevant and it takes a lot of energy. And so forth. So I'm very much of your latter part, which is look at the content and then say, what does the content lend itself to? And now that said, what I just said earlier about, tracking people as they're doing the training could be, a counter argument that if you see, no, John, everybody was doing the video, why do we have this text in there? It's an argument to be had. So that's my short take on it.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I would just add that, of course, we've got to talk to the learners, right? So we can't make any assumptions about how learners like to learn. That's why the empathy piece is so important, which you've already talked about. And also, I think how and when and where learners have to access the content, right? So if it's, if they're in a call center environment, we may be able to take them out to give them sort of more formal training, but then they may just need something they can access in the flow of work, which we're seeing a lot of now as a trend. So I think learning styles play into it very, in a very small way. It's more about, okay, how, when, and where do people, access the learning, and how can we make that easy for them? So, but great question, and one that comes up an awful lot.
Well, and I'll tell a little story about that. So, and please don't let anybody at SweetRush see this, particularly in IT, but we have IT security training that has a lot of video in it. And I look to that and I go, awesome, it's got video in it, because then I could start the video, go over and look at my emails, look at my Word docs, and then wait for it to finish. And then I can come back and do it out. Whereas with text, I feel obligated to actually have to read through the text. So, loving videos on occasion.
Yeah.
All right. Shall we?
Yeah, I think we've got about 5 more minutes, and then we'll move back over to our Q&A session and a couple of things to wrap up. But yeah, we have 5 minutes. Is there one in particular, John, that's striking you that you'd like to kind of go through?
Let me see here. Yeah, I mean, okay, maybe just to do a random sampling for 5 minutes. What I do see under efficiency about surveys regarding schedules and best times for training, and I like that. I think that that's something that if you went to ask them, you could almost do it almost apologetically to tell a learner, listen, we really want you to do this training. We know you're busy. We don't want to have to overly obligate you. So can you tell us what time of day or what day of the week or so on is going to be most conducive to you actually doing it without stress? And the one reason I love that is because oftentimes we don't really ask for their opinions whatsoever, and we may learn something. And secondly, it shows respect. And I think that, the whole respect piece is to say, hey, we know that this is an obligation, and therefore we really want to try to fit it into your day.
Nice. All right, the rogue green sticker and the yellow one. All right, let's have a look at empowering and social. Anything here jumping out?
Yeah. Okay. So for the high quality engaging content, that's a good one. But I think empowerment is more than just the content delivery and being pedantic. I think empowering here's what I consider to be empowering. About 20 years ago, I was doing work for IBM. And we were doing a lot of developing a lot of training for them, and they didn't want any really much at all feedback about completions and time in their e-learning and so on. Their feeling about it was, look, we're delivering this training so that you all can be better at your job. We're just going to evaluate you on your job. So even if you never go to our LMS and just do anything on your own, if you're doing well on the job, we're A-okay with that. And on the other hand, if you're not doing well at your job, I don't care how many hours you've spent over in the LMS, it's obviously not working. And for me, this is a great example of empowerment, which is to say, look, you're in control of your life. I'm not going to force you into any kind of training, but I am going to hold you to the standards and to performance standards. And by the way, the training will help you get there. So hint, hint, you may want to take advantage of that. But it's you. I'm not going to force it. And I think that that's at the heart of empowerment, is to say, hey, you're in charge of your own brain. You do whatever you want. But, ultimately, you probably want to do the training because it's probably going to make your life better. So when I see in here about, allow learners to shape examples. Yeah, I mean, if you can get content out of your learners, future stories for future e-learning, that's awesome. That's definitely a very positive thing under that. And then, social, you guys are all over this. Online communities, which ones are they already in? Both within the organization and maybe ones out in public. Peer training is a great one too. You all are nailing it. Community of practices. Let's set up to say, hey, anybody in this company who's interested in AI, I've started a group. We're going to meet weekly to talk about AI. Come on in. We develop our own language. We develop our own norms. What a great way to, spawn learning, because I'm going to go to that forum and say, hey, has anybody ever seen this new this or that, or this LLM and so forth? A huge way to foster learning and bring the social back into it.
And I would say these are great examples of design, incorporating that into your learning design in terms of needs analysis, though, right? We want to understand who these learners are, how easy it is for them to access these social learning communities, right? Do they have time in their day to do that? Do they have the technology and the tools to do that? So, I years ago worked in a manufacturing background, and we had two very different audiences, right? So how do you bring all of your different audience needs together? So I'd say that, yes, social learning is so important for learner-centered design experiences, but make sure that you're inclusive. Think about who those audience members are. What are their different needs? Who do you need to talk to? How do you tap into that? How do you find out what those needs are? So, don't forget that step. I think is really the key here too. These are great examples of ways you can incorporate that. But think about, all right, who is this for, and can they do it? All right, so I'm on my soapbox now. I think I'll probably get off. We are 10 minutes to the top of the hour, so I think we should probably stop here. Thank you all so much for your participation in this activity. We have a couple more slides. There's been quite a few questions asking about whether or not you'll have copies of the presentation and the slides and the mural. Yes to everything. you'll get an email from e-learning industry. I know that Tiffany, thank you, you've been responding in the chat. So you'll get an email from e-learning industry following this presentation with a link to the recording. And then you'll also get something from SweetRush where we'll also share a link to the recording and the course materials. So stay tuned for those.
And I would say somebody, regarding that, I mean, to be quite honest with you, you all had engaged in a training experiment today. We've used Mural internally. I guess some of our people have done it in webinars, but this is the first that I've ever done Mural in a webinar. And I got to say, you gave us a lot here, and I would love to share this. Maybe we put it let's clean up the table, and then maybe we present that in a couple, add them to our slide deck. I think that's a great idea. And you all are, I'm floored by the number of things that you have in here. They're all excellent. It gives us a lot of grist for the mill, which is part of why we wanted to do this, was to say, hey, let's learn from, the bright people that are out in our community.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. All right, with our last few minutes, we have a quick poll. So now that you've had a little bit of exposure to LCD and you've kind of started to think through some of these things, what do you think is going to be most challenging? Which 3 of these items do you think will be your top 3 challenges? And Mel, thank you so much. Mel's popped up a poll. You should be able to see this on screen now. You should be able to select up to 3 answers. And as John said, this is a work in progress for us. We're still sort of, incorporating LCD into our own solutions. So understanding which of these is, potentially more challenging will help us produce more materials and support for our clients and friends who are interested in incorporating these practices. So we'd love to hear from you.
I'm dying to know, to be honest with you. I know I have my 3 that I find to be the hardest.
Yeah.
But I'm curious what everyone else thinks.
Yeah. I don't know. Do you see that? I put it on the screen. Yeah, hopefully you can see this.
All right. The results are in.
All right.
Drum roll, please. Oh, here we are.
Okay.
Adaptive. Wow. Yes. I agree with that. I mean, I agree that in my own practice, it's a difficult one, and for a whole lot of reasons. I also think it's one of the most important. So you have this double whammy. It's hard to do, and it's the most important one to do. Mm-hmm. Empowering is another one. Really interesting, because I agree there too. It's so easy to just say, hey, you will take this hour of training. I'm going to nag you until you get it done. And it's difficult to say onus is on you to apply it. How do you actually get them to take ownership? That's been one of the top challenges that we found in our last 2 years in our surveys. They've said that the challenge of getting people to want to consume training and develop a mindset that they're in control of their own destiny. It's been tricky.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you so much, Mel, for that, and thanks, John, for your thoughts. I'm just very conscious now we've got a couple minutes left, so a quick summary of our LCD model here. Again, we really recommend that you just pull this through to your design, planning, and development process when you're creating your learning experiences. Begin by making it part of your needs analysis, by talking to your learners, gathering that data, using the data. And then as you're designing and building out and testing your content, prototype, test, iterate early and often, find out what's working before you deploy the situation to a wider audience. And, just to echo what John said earlier, it's not easy. And we already have so many things to consider, but I think if we can apply even just 1 or 2 of these principles, we'll be well on our way to creating more effective and impactful learning experiences that should improve the outcomes of your learning solutions. All right, we have a few minutes for questions, and then we have a favour to ask you. So I'll just pop the screen up and let's see if we've got any outstanding questions. Tiffany, Mel, are you seeing anything in the Q&A?
I am not. Okay. I've just popped a little nudge into chat, so I hope that will inspire anyone who's got a question they're sitting with.
Great. And if you don't, then you can always email us afterwards. We're going to share our contact details at the end. So if you think of something after the fact, please feel free to share it with us, and then we can respond. We usually put together an article anyway that just sort of summarizes all the questions that came out of the webinar, so that we can share them back with you, and we can benefit from one another's questions. But if we're not seeing anything, I think we may be able to jump ahead and then give you maybe a couple of.
Oh, we've just got one.
Yeah, last minute here.
Just in.
Just in, literally. Hot off the press. Any tips on how to tap into the data we don't have access to? Oh, that's a good one.
Ooh.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one. If you're talking about like a privately held company and you really don't know what sales revenues are looking like and you're trying to do sales training, it can be a pickle. I think that part of it, where I would go is to say, to leadership, to say, look, I'm in L&D for your company. You're asking me to change, to do training, obviously to address a business outcome. I really need to know what the numbers are, pre and post, so that I can build better stuff. And if you really are looking to say increase sales revenue, can you give me a baseline at where it is now, and then let me try some training, and then let's check in 6 months and see if we have seen the needle move. I can't help but believe, if I'm a head, running a business, and you tell me that you want the data in order to make training allow me to improve the numbers, I'm all ears. Really important thing. Now, you might talk about, what if I can't get to HR data? What if I can't find out stuff about the learners? Typically, that's a trickier question, and often involves, can you get an interview with a random sample of them? Sit down with them for a half hour just to find out who they are and how they think and so forth. You don't necessarily need demographic data to get some insight into how they operate in the world. That might help you build better training.
Mm-hmm.
We've got one more that's just popped in. I hope we have a moment to answer. Here's one asking, when you are using the learner-centered design, when do you consider the technology?
Yeah, well, you're asking the wrong people, I think, because a lot of times people are coming to SweetRush because they say, yeah, we have this infrastructure. We have an LMS, we have an LXP, we have Zoom. And so we're kind of, even though we do IoT, and we have worked with clients where there was no technology involved, inevitably technology's there. But I would say that, from the various beginnings, we always want to know what do learners have? We're working with a big multinational food service company. They have plants all over the world. And in many of those plants, if you want to do any kind of technology-based thing, to teach whatever to production workers, you're either going to bring them into a lunchroom, hopefully not a lunch, but you're going to bring them in and have like a slideshow up on the screen, or you're going to have to somehow get them in front of laptops. And so for that company, there is no technology for those people. We have to come up with manual ways of doing it. Slide decks or PDFs, or train the trainer, do facilitated workshops. So I would say early and often, to answer Yoselin, good questions to be asking about.
I'm going to have to move us on. I see there is another question, but please follow up with us and we will get that answer to you. With our last minute, we would love your help, please, with our 2024 L&D Trends Report. We would love it if you'd be among the first people to share your thoughts with us by clicking on the link that Tiffany has just placed into the survey. We'll also send this link to you as a follow-up. Should only take you a few minutes to complete, and we will be sure to send you a copy of the report when it's ready. If you want it, you'll just need to give us your email and we'll add you to our list.
Yeah, you'll be able to see it. And it'll probably be first quarter of next year is when we'll have it all assembled and ready for you. But yeah, give us the data and we'll give you the data back.
Yeah. All right. And it just on the hour, just thank you so much to Mel and the e-learning industry team for having us. Thank you all for coming. John and I would love to stay in touch, and Tiffany, for that matter, will share her details with you too. So please feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn or by email if you have any follow-up questions or just want to geek out about learner-centered design. And John, I think, has
and I'll be at DevLearn, flying out tonight, Las Vegas. If you're actually at DevLearn, come by booth 115. Love to see you. I know Mel's going to be there, so I'd love to see any of you. They're going to be in Vegas tomorrow and Thursday.
Beautiful. All right. Thank you all very much.